Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're going to be doing some Satellarknight test hands. So I'm really excited for this one because this deck has actually been sitting on my desk for quite a while in preparation to do some test hands of it. I've wanted to do this one for a long time because I see Satellarknights as kind of like the most simplistic deck in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Which is really cool because basically all you're doing in this deck is if you can memorize 4 main deck monsters and you can memorize 2 extra deck monsters, you're going to be totally fine with Satellarknights and understanding the basic concepts of how to play the deck, which is really what I love to explain to you guys as a deck that's very simplistic to see how to play, but at the same time complex enough to be able to play it in a competitive level, which is really what this deck is based around, going into the grind game and being able to control the board. So that's really, really cool about this deck. So without further ado, guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell near so you can come part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below because we have some awesome rewards for you guys, like getting your name description for every single video, getting assigned cards in the mail, or even getting requested deck profile every single month as your patron, along with test hands. So without further ado, guys, let's get straight on into this. So like I said, let's go ahead and before we even get into this, let's go ahead and go over the 4 Satellarknight monsters that you're going to need to memorize in order to play this deck. So you're going to need to memorize your copy of Deneb, Anukalai, and you're going to need to memorize out a copy of Vega, and you're going to need to memorize Altair. These are the 4 that you're going to need to memorize in order to play this deck, and you're going to need to memorize a copy of Trevair and the Dark Satellarknight, which if you haven't seen the deck profile, you can definitely check out the deck profile to see exactly how they work totally in depth, but we're going to go over them again right here, and if you guys want to see that deck profile, it is down in the description right down there. So let's go ahead really quickly and go over these. So basically what they do is, if you can remember this, if you can remember Goblinberg, Monster Reborn, Rhoda, and Foolish Burial, you'll be fine. Because that's basically what they are. If you guys have played any other decks, that's basically what they do. This card lets you special summon a Satellarknight from your hand. This lets you special summon a Satellarknight from your graveyard. This lets you add any Satellarknight monster from your deck to your hand. This lets you send any Satellarknight card from your deck to the graveyard. Then, if you can memorize those 4, this is your only 4 main deck normal summons that you're going to be having in the entire deck. Then you have your copies of your Trevair and your Dark Satellarknight. Now, basically what this does is if you only have 2 Satellarknight monsters to go into, you can overlay this with 2 Satellarknight monsters on your side of the field, and then after you do that, you go ahead and detach a material, discard a card from your hand, and then you overlay Trevair on top of it. This will let you Giant Trunade the entire field and send every card on the field back to the opponent's hand, which is really cool. Now, this is the big boss monster and the big play of the entire deck, is to summon Trevair and to OTK your opponent with, well, not OTK, but like slowly grind it out where you're getting the cards and the resources off the field with your Trevair and controlling the deck with your traps that you have in your main deck, if you guys didn't know the way this deck actually played, which is kind of cool, and actually the way that the deck functions. Now, this card also has a really neat effect that you can detach a material from this card and send a random card from your opponent's hand to the graveyard. So if you shuffle back or put a bunch of cards back in your opponent's hand off the field, you potentially have the potential to hit something as well, which is kind of neat, of the cards that you just put back. So let's go ahead and do some test hands now and see what we can actually do with this deck now that you kind of understand the basic concept of the way that Satellarknights play. Because if you can remember Foolish Burial, Monster Reborn, Rhoda, and Goblinberg, you'll be fine. Like, that's basically all the cards do, and they're very simple effects that mimic a lot of other well-known staple cards in the entire game. Vega being the kind of the weird one, because you don't see Goblinberg in everything, but that's kind of the only one that I can think of that special summons from your hand another monster, but that's basically what it does. So let's go ahead and see what we can do with this particular hand and shuffle the deck straight up. Now, it doesn't really matter what you get in your hand, to be honest. As long as you have like a Deneb or a copy of Anukalai, you'll be fine. So let's go ahead and see what we can do. So we get a Nova Alpha, Ghost Ogre, Call the Haunted, Vega, and a copy of Deneb. Okay, we're totally fine. This is a great hand. Okay, so what we're going to do is right off the bat, you're not going to summon the Vega because this is first turn. You don't want to just throw out the Vega and just immediately have all your monsters on the field. That's not the way the deck plays. You want to go ahead and normal summon the copy of Deneb because you have a setup right here with a negation in your Nova Alpha with the copy of Deneb. You're going to go ahead and search from your deck to your hand a copy of Altair, which then can get you a copy of your Trevair next turn if your opponent destroys your copy of Deneb. Especially with Call by the Grave not running around quite as much anymore, it's going to be a little bit easier to get out your copy of Trevair. So rest in peace, Call by Grave. which will be coming back hopefully soon. So what this card is basically going to do is you're going to go ahead and set your 2 cards. Make sure you play around the make sure you play around your mech knights, so set them in different areas, and then you're going to pass. It's very simplistic. You're not going to do anything fancy. You're just going to normal summon the Deneb, get your search, and then pass. When you do that, your opponent is going to summon a couple of monsters. You're going to have a negation here, and you're going to have a pop in the Ghost Ogre, because if you're playing against anything like Dragon Link or Zodiac or anything like that, you have the copy of the Alpha and the Ghost Ogre to pop something to interrupt a combo with the Ghost Ogre, and you have the copy of Alpha to be able to pop something as well, but it does cost you your copy of Deneb to get rid of it with the copy of Alpha, but you're going to get to draw a card, which is going to be impermanent, that's going to get you another play. Now, something else to keep in mind is you also have your copy of Call of the Haunted, but I would hold it because you have the copy of Altair in your hand that you're going to get another play off of if you play your cards right. So what we're going to do is we're going to pass turn, and we're going to go ahead and draw. So we're going to go draw for a turn, and we have the copy of Impermanence that we can set here. The second Impermanence we can set here, and then you have the copy of Vega that you can normal summon. Vega will normal summon. You'll normal summon, special summon the copy of Altair off the Vega's effect. The copy of Altair will special summon the copy of Deneb from your graveyard. So you have, hey, guess what? We have 3, which is the exact material requirements for your copy of Trever. But don't forget, your Deneb has an ability. It lets you search from your deck a copy of a Satellarknight monster other than itself, so you can search from your deck to your hand a copy of Altair to replace the copy that you just summoned. Now, something to keep in mind about this deck is that it's going to be a very grindy deck that you're going to be going into, and it's a Duelist Alliance deck. I mean, what's not to love about this? It's just a good deck. Now, the really cool thing that you have to keep in mind, or the only downside to this particular field, is that your copy of Altair does have an ability that says that the only copies of your Satellarknight monsters can attack for the rest of the turn. So if you're hoping to go into a copy of Utopia double and no TK this turn, you're not going to be able to do it with your copy of Altair. Now, you could have if you just normal summoned out the copy of Vega and you activated the copy of Call of the Haunted, because it could have revived this copy of Deneb. You would have still got your search off the Altair, and you could have searched another copy of Vega instead of searching the copy of Altair, and the Altair would have never touched the field, and your field would have looked a little bit like this, and your hand would have looked like this, except you would have had a Vega instead of a second Altair. But I'm showing you guys how it would look if you had the copy of the Trever instead, which is the main board. We're going to go ahead and overlay into the Deneb, the Vega, and the Altair. Go for Trever. Trever's effect is going to bounce all these cards back to your hand and all the cards on your opponent's side of the field back to their hand. Essentially, Giant Trunades the whole field. Then you detach a material from this card, which is always going to be the Deneb, and you're going to set on your side of the field the copies of the Impermanence and the Call by the Grave back as well, and then you're going to attack them for 21 directly. They did have to discard a card from their hand because you did have the effect of Trever, which it sends a card because it says you send a card at random from your opponent's hand to the graveyard by detaching a material from this card. And if this card with XZ materials is destroyed, you can target a Satellarknight monster in your graveyard and special summon it, which is going to be the Deneb, which is going to get you an additional search, which is going to get you into another Trever again, which is going to be super cool. So we're going to go ahead and pass with this particular field. You have 2 negates with the 2 impermanents that let you negate monster effects, which is going to be pretty nice to be able to negate those monster effects. And then you have the copy of Call of the Haunted that's going to be able to special summon back the copy of Deneb back to your field in attack position, which then is going to let you search another copy of a Vega, which is going to get you another play again to be able to get your play of the Trever again. Now, the really cool thing is your face-up cards like Call by the Haunted and your copies of Crackdown and stuff like that are going to be able to be used multiple times. So any continuous trap that you want to throw into this deck, like Fiendish Chain, Fogblade, copies of Oasis of the Dragon Soul. There's a lot of different continuous trap cards and continuous spell cards that you can throw into this deck that'll be very utility that can get you a lot of different plays. So that's it for the first test hand. Let's go into the second one and see what we can do with the next one. So it's, as you can see, very, very simplistic. We basically made 1 normal summon or 2 normal summons and we grinded it out. That's basically what the deck does. It's very simplistic in doing that, and it works. I mean, this deck is so simple that I would recommend this deck to anybody who is just picking up Yu-Gi-Oh! Because it is probably the most simple deck to play in the entire game, because if you can know where to hit the opponent and know where the choke points are to be able to hit your opponent's plays, or even not with the amount of negations that you're going to get, it's still not that bad. And you don't play anything in the extra deck that's a link monster. You're only literally learning the easiest extra deck mechanic in the entire game, and that's Xyz summoning, as I'll show you guys. Look at this. You're only learning Xyz summoning in my deck profile to learn how to play this deck. There's nothing in here that's a synchro. There's nothing in here that's a XZ. It's just Xyz. There's nothing else. So let's go ahead and see what we can do for the next test hand. So let's go ahead and draw. We're going to go ahead and draw into a Deneb, a copy of a Nuclei, Vega, Anti-Spell Fragrance, and a Monster Reborn. So with this hand, you could do some very simplistic stuff. This hand is a very much going second hand because you don't have any real negation in the back row, but you do have a way to slow your opponent down with the Anti-Spell Fragrance, so you're still all right. So let's go ahead and do something kind of more simple. You can go ahead and normal summon out the copy of a Nuclei, and then its effect will go off, sending from your deck to the graveyard a copy of Deneb. And that Monster Reborn does come in handy in this particular instance. So we're going to go ahead and send the copy of Deneb to the graveyard, or you can send a copy, you can normal summon the Vega first. It depends on which way you want to go. I just kind of want to go for a simplistic play to be able to not, go all the way in, but kind of go in, if you know what I mean. So we're going to go ahead and send the Deneb to the graveyard, which then we're going to activate the copy of Monster Reborn. So Monster Reborn is then going to bring back the copy of Deneb from the graveyard, and its effect is going to go off to be able to search from your deck to your hand a copy of Altair, which then you have the copy of Altair and the Vega in your hand, which is going to get your Trevere next turn. So now that you have this particular field, you can do some really cool things and go ahead and set your copy of Anti-Spell Fragrance, overlay these two monsters on your side of the field, and then you can go in for a copy of, let's say you could go for Abyss Dweller, or you could go for the super defensive play with the copy of Baguska to lock your opponent down, and then when they go into their next turn, you have the Anti-Spell Fragrance as well, which is going to get you additional plays. So this is the super defensive play, that if you're getting pushed to go first in this deck and you don't have a lot of negations, but you can get two monsters on the field, that's not like really crazy, you can just go ahead in for 41 and you can go in for an Anti-Spell or any back row that you have and kind of lock your opponent down until you can go off really good. So the really cool thing about this hand is if your opponent passes and you go into your next turn, you draw, and then you have the copy of number 41 that is going to detach a material from it, which I always recommend detaching the Deneb. You can switch the copy of Baguska to attack position, which it only applies when it's in defense position, its other effects. So when it's in attack position, it can be destroyed by opponent's card effects, and your opponent can target this attack position card with card effects, but it turns off the defense position effect, which is kind of cool. So we're going to go ahead and normal summon the copy of Vega, which is then going to special summon out the Altair, and any set spells or traps that they hope to activate during this next turn, they're not going to get to activate because you're going to revive the copy of your Deneb. Deneb is going to search the deck for a copy of Altair again to get you another play for the next turn. Shuffle your deck up again. And then guess what we can go for? You can just overlay these again right here for a copy of Trevere. And if they can't stop the Trevere, everything is going to get shuffled back except for your copy of your, this will go to the graveyard because it was attached. But it'll shuffle back everything back to your hand, which is kind of cool, and get it off the field. Then you can detach your copy of Deneb, get it in the graveyard, and then you have the copy of Called by the Haunted and a copy of Anti-Spell that'll get you additional plays again. So you can also detach a material from this, and then you can, which you already did, and send a card from the deck, from their hand to the graveyard to get you an additional play. Now, if you go into the next turn, to their turn, you can go ahead and activate Anti-Spell again, which will lock them out of spells, and then activate the copy of Call the Haunted, bring back your copy of Deneb, which will get you another search of a Vega, which is going to get you into a Utopia double, and I'm going to show you how you do that. So we're going to go ahead and shuffle the deck, and then we're going to draw for our turn, which is, this is our field at this point. And now you have an Ash Blossom. You have a copy of a hand trap. So we're going to go ahead and normal summon the Vega, normal summon out the copy of Deneb with the copy of Vega's effect, or special summon it, which then it will get and its effect off to get you an additional search, which can be a copy of literally any other card, which I would recommend Vega again to get you another play. And at this point, you have two options. You can either go for the copy of your You can go for the copy of your Utopia double and OTK them with a copy of Utopia, but the only downside is you do have the copy of Anti-Spell on the field. Or you can go in for a number 60 and double the attack of Trevere. Or you can go in for a copy of Sebaguska. Or you can go in for a copy of Deltaros. Deltaros is the other option that you can go in for right here to go 1, 2, 3 with these 3 cards again. Or you can go in for Trevere again and shuffle everything back again and just keep controlling the board over and over again, where your opponent's essentially not getting any advantage at all. And this is turn like 7 now that you've essentially controlled the board consistently every single turn. Then you can detach a material from this and then be able to pop a card on the field. And then you have this that can send a card from their hand to the graveyard and be able to just keep doing this over and over again until you finally win, to be able to win the game, which you kind of have to read situation to situation when you're playing this deck. So let's go ahead and do one more test hand and see what we can actually pull off with one more test hand. Because like I just showed you guys, it's very consistent, which is what's really nice about this deck. And that's what I love playing Tellarknights, and why I love playing Tellarknights is because they're so consistent in what they're trying to do. And it's very simplistic. I mean, yes, they do, with the Deneb search, you do kind of lose out a little bit if they stop the Altair or they stop the copy of your Deneb. You do kind of lose a little bit, but you're not going to lose so much that you're going to lose the game if you just don't get to draw a card or you don't get to get one extra card. You're playing in pennies with this kind of advantage, which is still kind of cool, but it's not going to be like, hey, I'm going to lose if I don't get that one search, which is what's nice about this particular deck. So let's go ahead and draw. We're going to get a Rhoda, which is going to be super helpful, Ash, Nova Alpha, Vega, and a copy of Ghost Ogre, which we have 3 negations in our hand, and we have a search, which is going to help us out. See, this is what I'm talking about right here. If this Rhoda gets hit at any place, it doesn't matter because I have the Vega that I can normal summon, which are usually not going to stop just a normal summon of a Vega. And I have the copy of Nova Alpha that I have a draw off of, and then I also have the 2 hand traps to back it up. So I have 3 negations essentially in my hand, or a pop and 2 negations of a search in any card on the field, which is going to be super helpful. So let's just act like we get it and go ahead and say, hey, we did get that search, which we're going to go ahead and grab a copy of Deneb, which then is going to normal summon out to our field, save the Vega. I always save the Vega until I can summon a copy of Trevere. Now, that's something very important that I didn't mention earlier, but that's something that I don't notice that you probably have noticed as I'm playing. I don't, on first turn, just throw the Vega out unless I'm going to go for a Baguska, or if I'm going to go for a very defensive play that I need to Xyz summon. Save this if you're not going to Xyz summon, just save it. Go ahead and grab from your deck to your hand your copy of Altair, shuffle the deck, and then you're going to set your copy of Nova Alpha. I mean, it's that simple. When it goes into next turn, you can discard your 2 Ghost Girls to hit them for twice, 2 different hits. You go ahead and activate the Nova Alpha, negate something, and then you get a draw as well, which is going to be an impermanence. And since I don't control a card, guess what? The impermanence is now live, that I can throw it out of my hand as well. So I drew into a 3rd negation and a really 4 cards that I've dealt with against my opponent with the copy of impermanence. That was just random. It could have been anything, but it still was the impermanence, which is another hand trap. Now, if we draw for turn, you're going to get Crackdown, and you can shuffle everything back by normal summoning the Vega, special summoning Altair from hand. Altair will affect. Use the copy of Deneb. Deneb will search the deck for a copy of Altair, which you usually search Altair off the copy of Deneb, which you guys have noticed. And then you're going to overlay it for Trevere. And then you're going to basically shuffle everything back. And then pop a card on the field, which you're going to send the copy of Deneb again. Set the copy of Crackdown, and then you have shuffled everything back, send a card from your hand to the graveyard, send one from their hand. You have a setup for this, and then you also have the copy of Crackdown that you can take an opponent's monster next turn, which can be their first normal summon that you just took, and now they don't have a card on their side of the field, and it can't activate its effects either. So that's pretty much it for the test hands of Tellarknights. I think I've very thoroughly explained the way that the deck plays and show you guys the simplicity of the way that this deck plays. Again, I'll go over this. If you can remember these 4, like I mentioned at the beginning, if you can just remember these 4 Tellarknight monsters effects, you'll be fine. I promise you, you'll be fine. The other cards will come to you, especially if you're just learning this deck. Anukalai sends a Tellarknight monster from your deck to the graveyard. Deneb searches a Tellarknight monster from your deck to your hand. Altair lets you add from your deck to or special summon from your graveyard a Tellarknight monster, but only Tellarknight monsters can attack for the rest of the turn. And Vega has the ability to special summon any Tellarknight monster from your hand except another copy of herself. So basically that's it. If you can memorize these, you'll be okay. I promise. And the rest of the deck will come in time as you play with it. A lot of these are staple cards in this deck, like Hand Traps, Solemn Judgment. Everything else pretty much just says no to your opponent, or you're trying to shuffle back their field into their hand. So that's it, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Definitely hit that bell down there so you can come part of Notification Squad and tell me what you think of this video down in the comments down below. It's a really fun deck, and it's a Duelist Alliance era deck, which is probably my favorite era in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! So definitely tell what you think of this deck down in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. And don't forget to check out the Patreon down in the description so you guys can get all those awesome rewards, and we'll see you guys in the next one. See you later, guys!